Neon Gold, the multi-billion-dollar saga of Mountain Dew. Introduction: the $7 billion liquid asset. In the pantheon of global consumer goods, few products occupy a space as financially lucrative and culturally distinct as Mountain Dew. To the uninitiated, it is simply a neon green soda. To Wall Street, it is a billion-dollar brand, a designation reserved for products that generate over $1 billion in annual retail sales. But Mountain Dew is not just a billion-dollar brand. It is a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem that serves as one of the primary cash engines for PepsiCo, a corporate titan with annual net revenues exceeding $91 billion. This is not merely a story of sugar and water. It is a financial odyssey that begins in the Prohibition-era hills of Tennessee and ends in the boardrooms of Purchase, New York. It is a case study in how a niche mixer for whiskey was re-engineered into a high-velocity lifestyle brand that dominates the gaming industry, fuels the extreme sports economy, and maintains a stranglehold on the citrus soda market share that competitors like Coca-Cola have spent millions trying and failing to break. From the specific margins of syrup concentrate to the economics of exclusive pouring rights at Taco Bell, this is the story of how Mountain Dew prints money. 1. The birth of the business model, from whiskey mixer to commercial failure. The Hartman brothers and the zero revenue start. The story begins in the 1940s, not in a laboratory, but in Knoxville, Tennessee. Barney and Allie Hartman were beverage bottlers who faced a specific market problem. They couldn't find a soda that mixed well with their preferred spirit, whiskey. At the time, mixers were a low-margin commodity. They created a lithiated lemon-lime soda purely for personal utility. They jokingly called it Mountain Dew, a 19th century slang term for moonshine, or illegal Highland whiskey. At this stage, the revenue model was non-existent. It was a utility product with zero distribution. When they decided to commercialize it, they attempted to trademark the name in 1948. The initial business model was a franchise attempt in its crudest form. They tried to license the formula to other bottlers. The first valuation? $0. Market rejection. The Hartman brothers approached Coca-Cola with their formula, offering to sell the entire brand. They were summarily rejected. They simply could not find a market fit. The flavor was different, heavier on citrus, less carbonated than mixers like ginger ale. The initial make-money strategy was to sell it as a regional novelty item with a hillbilly mascot named Willie the Hillbilly on the bottle. By the early 1950s, the brand was effectively dead in the water. The revenue streams were trickles, barely covering the cost of the glass bottles. The brothers suffered a financial heart attack, literally in Allie's case, and the business was essentially insolvent. The pivot, the Tip Corporation. The turning point came when the brand was acquired by the Tip Corporation of Marion, Virginia. This is where the first real capital injection occurred, though the exact dollar amount of this early transaction was likely in the low thousands, a pittance compared to the brand's future value. The Tip Corporation, led by Bill Jones, tweaked the formula. They did something radical for the soda industry at the time. They hypercharged the caffeine and added concentrated orange juice. This was the birth of the modern product. The revenue model shifted from mixer to energy booster, although the term didn't exist yet. By 1964, the Tip Corporation had proven regional viability, generating enough cash flow to catch the eye of a giant. 2. The growth engine and scaling strategy. The 1964 acquisition. The PepsiCo deal. In 1964, PepsiCo, then Pepsi-Cola Company, acquired the Tip Corporation. While the specific acquisition price was not disclosed in the 1964 financial papers, industry analysts of the era viewed it as a minor portfolio expansion, a flanker brand to combat Coca-Cola's Sprite. However, this acquisition unlocked the growth engine, the Pepsi Bottling Group, PBG. Scaling distribution, the network effect. Mountain Dew's revenue did not multiply from millions to billions because of the taste alone. It scaled because it was plugged into Pepsi's existing logistics network. The bottling economics. PepsiCo operates on a concentrate model. They manufacture the secret formula, the high-margin intellectual property, and sell it to independent franchise bottlers. The multiplier? Overnight, Mountain Dew went from being available in a few dozen counties in Appalachia to being available in thousands of trucks nationwide. The pricing strategy: volume over prestige. In the 1970s and 80s, the scaling strategy relied on aggressive pricing. Mountain Dew was often positioned as the more-for-your-money drink due to its higher caffeine content. The metric: milligrams of caffeine per dollar. Mountain Dew offered roughly 55 milligrams of caffeine per 12-ounce can, compared to Coca-Cola's 34 milligrams. The demographic shift. The brand moved away from the hillbilly marketing, which limited the total addressable market, and toward the youth energy demographic. This pivot expanded the potential customer base from rural adults to every teenager in America. By the 1990s, this scaling strategy had turned Mountain Dew into a brand generating over $1 billion in sales annually, cementing its place as the third most popular liquid refreshment in the United States, behind only Coke and Pepsi. 3. How the brand dominated its market. The citrus wars. Competitive advantage. The category of one. Mountain Dew's greatest financial triumph was creating a monopoly on the heavy citrus category. While Coke and Pepsi fought the Cola Wars, a zero-sum game worth billions, Mountain Dew quietly annexed a different territory. Crushing the competition. Mellow Yellow and Surge. Coca-Cola realized too late that they were losing the youth market to Dew. They launched counterattacks. Mellow Yellow launched in 1979. Despite Coke's massive distribution network, roughly 2 times larger than Pepsi's in some regions, Mellow Yellow never achieved more than a fraction of Dew's market share. Surge launched in 1997 with a massive $50 million-plus marketing budget. Super Bowl ads, free sampling. It was a direct clone designed to kill Dew. The financial result? Mountain Dew held its ground. By the early 2000s, Surge was discontinued. Retail sales collapsed, while Mountain Dew continued to grow at a CAGR that outpaced the cola category. Today, Mountain Dew holds an estimated 80% plus market share of the citrus soda category. The velvet rope of patents and trade secrets. While not patented in the pharmaceutical sense, the flavor profile of Mountain Dew acts as a trade secret barrier. The specific ratio of concentrated orange juice to caffeine and citric acid creates a mouthfeel that generics, like Walmart's Mountain Lightning, fail to replicate. This brand loyalty allows PepsiCo to charge a premium price, often 20 to 30% higher than generic store brands, while retaining the customer. 4. The revenue model behind every dollar, the mechanics of the syrup. To understand how Mountain Dew generates $7 billion in estimated brand value, one must dissect the unit economics. 1. The concentrate model, the high-margin core. PepsiCo, the parent, makes its money by selling concentrate to bottlers. Cost of goods sold, COGS. The ingredients, flavor oils, caffeine, and dye, are incredibly cheap. The markup? PepsiCo sells a gallon of concentrate for hundreds of dollars. The margin? This segment of the business typically enjoys operating margins of 30 to 35%. It is the print money system. The heavy lifting, bottling, trucking, and stocking shelves, is done by the bottlers, who operate on much thinner margins, typically 8 to 12%. Fountain sales, the volume play. A significant portion of revenue comes from bag and box syrups sold to restaurants and gas stations. The yield? A 5-gallon box of syrup costs a retailer roughly $80 to $100. The output? That box produces roughly 30 gallons of finished soda, mixed 5 to 1 with water. The profit? At $2.50 per cup, the retail revenue generated from one box is over $500. PepsiCo captures the upfront value of the box, ensuring cash flow regardless of whether the retailer sells the soda. The impulse buy, the high velocity. Mountain Dew has the highest single-serve velocity in the Pepsi portfolio. A 20-ounce bottle sold at a gas station for $2.59 has a significantly higher profit margin per ounce than a 12-pack sold at Walmart for $7.99. The gamer mechanic. The caffeine addiction cycle ensures repeat customers. Unlike a juice purchase, which might be occasional, the Dew consumer is often a daily user, creating a recurring revenue stream disguised as retail sales. 5. Financial milestones and billion-dollar decisions. The IPO context. Mountain Dew is not a standalone stock. It is a primary asset of PepsiCo, ticker PEP.